My name is Charles Riddell. I'm the associate editor of a magazine called Sustainable Industries. We cover sustainable business up and down the West Coast from Vancouver, BC, down to San Diego. My question is really for the House left side of the stage. It comes from your comments, Barbara, about LEED homes or LEED buildings not being less expensive to rebuild should catastrophe strike. That's all well and good, but I wonder if the insurance industry, the banking industry, might not see a disconnect between talking about mitigation and not actually incenting the things that will keep us at 450 or below 450 and 2 degrees C by giving up some of those $22 trillion or however much there is in banking. I don't have that number. Now,
61 trillion in banking assets as of 2008. Banking deposits, sorry.
So 61 trillion. So giving up some of that money now, because over the long term, incenting less environmentally harmful products is going to be good. You're thinking short term and saying that we all need to think long term, and I don't understand that disconnect.
You have LEED homes, and I'm going to give you an example of safety. So the insurance company will give you a discount if you have, for example, a fire alarm, if you have a smoke detector in your house. And that's a way we've incented safety over the years. LEED certified homes, that type of construction, is new to us. Have we stepped up to the plate yet to say we'll offer reductions? No, not at this point. We need to look more at how those homes are doing on the claims end and the actuarial studies before we can do that. It's not a giveaway. It's a matter of we need to do more work on them before we can determine whether there should be discounts.
Does anyone else want to come in on the first question? Sandra.
Sure. I think it's a good question, and it comes up often in terms of the role of banks or insurers or other financial institutions in incenting good behavior. I think that, as Barbara said, with the LEED buildings in particular, so far, there's not a great database to look at to assess whether, in fact, there's a business case to be made for them being much lower to operate over the long term, although we think that's the case. There's a lot of work going on in our institution, and in fact, through UNEP FI, we just hosted a whole workshop on financing green buildings. You'll be happy to know, with experts on LEED in and out for the whole day, to try to grapple with this question. I think what's going to happen is that over the coming months and maybe years, we will start to understand better what, in fact, the amount of savings is available in a LEED building and across different regions. I mean, one LEED building is not the same as another. There are a whole bunch of things you can do to a building to make it a green building. The thing that we're doing is making sure that our lenders and risk managers are up to speed on this, and I know other financial institutions are doing the same, so that as the information becomes more available, we will be able to make rational decisions about how this should be reflected in the way that we lend and the rates that we charge.
Just let me add an anecdote, a footnote on that. What we're seeing in UNEP FI around the whole real estate piece is that the concept of responsible property as an asset class is evolving very quickly. And in terms of those big institutional investors with the big piles of money to invest, people like the Norwegian fund, they can see the tangibility of that investment. You know, a lot of the technical work has been done over the last 20, 30 years in terms of how you make a building more efficient. There are issues, there are problems, the alignment between the owners and the tenants, those sort of things. But as an asset class which has emerged very, very quickly, responsible property is one to watch, right?
Absolutely.
Barbara.
And maybe, Michael, if I could, or Paul, just pick up on that too. It's not only the home, but it's where you locate the home. So you can have a LEED building that's on a coast of PEI versus, say, in an urban center in Toronto or Vancouver. Again, that's going to elicit different rates. So it's not just your construction, it's where you're locating that particular construction.
For the Brits in the room, PEI?
Prince Edward Island.
Where's the Man United fan? You know that anyway, don't you? All right, Prince Edward Island. Okay.
That's my second one.
Yeah, these panelists were warned if they did 3 acronyms which people didn't understand, they were out. Okay. Good. The final question of the session.
My name is Javeria Warsi. I'm with the Vancouver Economic Development Commission. I lived and breathed green buildings for the 2 years prior to this, so I'll try not to comment. I'll try to keep it to a question, but I'll build on Mr. Manu's question earlier, as well as Amanda's question, sort of this third world, north-south divide and access. With energy efficiency retrofits, which a lot of jurisdictions are picking up on as, kill two birds with one stone, you can generate, stimulate the economy as well as reduce greenhouse gas emissions. A lot of the lofty goals that we've talked about, or the policy mechanisms that we've talked about, assume that you've got this access to capital, but the people who need energy efficiency upgrades don't have access to capital. So low-income housing or seniors housing or social housing. So, PACE is all very well if you own your home and you're going to be paying property taxes. And how do we get that capital to the people who need it?
Great question. I mean, there's lots of smart ideas and thinking, but at the end of the day, if you don't have it, you can't invest in it, and no one's going to give you it as a Christmas present, right? Or a whatever present. Great question.
Very good question, yeah. So, I'll say just a couple of things on that. One is that in some cases, PACE can be used in affordable housing, depending upon the ownership structure, potentially for the owner of the, if it's multifamily, it could be a private owner, or in some cases, it might be an entity that could access PACE. So it's not out of the question. There are other solutions that are being tested, revolving loan funds potentially, and I'll just make two other quick comments. One is thinking about potentially blending and having a portfolio of many different types of properties that might have different characteristics and different risk levels, and blending them in a way that would help to ensure access. But I think your point is a really good one. In the work that we're doing on efficiency, we're looking at, in the US, low and moderate income families spend somewhere between 20 to 25% of income on energy. So savings for that population is really significant. And we're starting to think about efficiency programs for that population as the basis for an asset building program or for a savings program, since it's such a significant piece of their income. But access to capital was your question, and a critical one.
Any additional takers on that question? Sandra, quick one.
Sure. I think that the low-income housing is in fact an interesting area. I guess it's easier when you're talking about low-income housing that's being built by the municipality or the province, or I guess in the U.S. Federally or state-funded. And certainly, I think that what we're seeing in many municipalities in Canada are incentives and initiatives to green low-income housing. But that's the housing that's provided by, the state, as opposed to individual families. So you're right, that is a market that is going to be more difficult to assist. But certainly public housing, lots of greening of that, depending on regional incentives. And also in the US, and Bruce might be able to explain this better than I can, but under the Community Reinvestment Act, banks have to demonstrate a certain amount of investment in low-income communities. And one of the ways that they do this, and one of the ways our bankers in the US are involved, is financing low-income housing projects that generate tax credits. And organizations who have a commitment to community support can actually buy these tax credits. So they sort of get a stake in the low-income housing. And the projects that we've been involved in, lots of them are LEED Gold projects, solar roofs. It's incredible. So there seems to be, and maybe you can add to this, Bruce, if this is a trend or it's just the pockets that we're seeing, but lots of low-income green housing, like, a lot greener than the stuff I can afford on my house. But it's fantastic.
I'd concur totally with that. I think one interesting facet that I'll just toss out there is that, and I don't know what the case is in Canada, but in the US, a lot of affordable housing, the tenants don't pay their utility bills. So we do have an issue of incenting behavior and helping to advance efficiency because of that dynamic.